MPE allows for extra nuanced control over electronic instruments by sending multiple dimensions of expression along with every note in a polyphonic chord. There's a growing number of soft synths and DAWs that offer plug-and-play compatibility with MPE controllers, and most of these contain an abundance of presets that will let you make use of MPE expression without any need for much setup. However, some soft synths, particularly Roli's recently released Equator 2, make it incredibly easy to set up MPE patches for yourself. We've got Equator 2 open here, and we're going to take a little look at how we can use MPE to add a bit of nuance to a patch we've built ourselves. So I'm starting off with two basic analog style wave tables here. I'm going to tune the first one 12 semitones below the second, and I've got LFOs 1 and 2 adding some slow moving modulation to wavetable position. So that creates just a really basic analog style synth sound with a really subtle bit of movement. Next, I'm going to engage the filter. I'm going to keep it in low pass 12 mode, roll the cutoff down a little bit and add a bit of a resonance bump. I'm going to route envelope 2 here to have a bit of cut off modulation at the start of each note. To route things like this in Equator 2, we just select the modulator and then we can drag to add a modulation amount. I'm going to go to this amp envelope, just increase the attack and release times a little bit. And then finally, let's just jump over to the effects tab here and add a little bit of room reverb. And the result is a really pretty straightforward analog style poly sound. So now let's make use of the MPE capabilities of our controller. So I'm using Roli's Seaboard block here, but this will work with any MPE style controller. This section here in the center of Equator 2's control panel is where we can control the inputs coming from the MPE controller. You can see there's two modes here, MPE and standard. In standard mode, you can route and control the messages coming from classic MIDI controller messages like aftertouch and velocity. And in MPE mode, we get these 5 dimensions of control, which in Roli's terminology are labelled strike, glide, slide, press and lift. But in reality, these are basically the same as classic MIDI controller messages. Strike is effectively velocity, glide, pitch bend. Slide is the modulation that we get from moving our finger up and down our MPE controller. Press is effectively aftertouch and lift is release velocity. So strike and glide are automatically routed for us. Strike to the amp envelope, so velocity controls the volume of our patch, and glide is controlling polyphonic pitch bend without us needing to do anything. What we can do, however, is use these transfer curves to set up how these messages respond, which we can kind of tailor to our playing style and our patch. And we can do that either by just tweaking the curves ourselves or loading, as I've done here, loading a preset or a pre-saved curve. So now let's route these other 3 messages to some places that make sense for our patch. So aftertouch first, or pressure as it's labelled here. Let's route this to filter cutoff. That means that we can apply a bit of pressure to the playing surface while holding down a chord to add a bit of filter modulation. And because we're in MPE mode, we can do that for each individual note in a chord. Now a slide here, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add another oscillator, so I'm going to just have a simple noise oscillator here. I'm going to turn the volume down and then root slide to the volume there, which means as I run my finger up, the keys of my seaboard block, it introduces a bit of noise to the patch. And again, I can use these curves however I want to control how that responds. Now finally, let's go to lift here. What I'm going to do is root lift, give that some, on the amp envelope here, some negative modulation of release time. What that will mean is the patch will cut off more abruptly depending on how quickly I remove my hand from the controller. So gentle release like that. And then yeah, again, I can play around with this transfer curve to tailor how that works. So that just lets us be a little bit more expressive with a really basic virtual analog polysynth sound. Thanks.